Breaking news now at 5 on KPIX 5 News and streaming on CBSN Bay Area. New surveillance video shows the VTA shooting suspect leaving his home this morning and driving off to work, where police say he opened fire on his co-workers.
This is a very dark moment for our city and for our community.
A deadly shooting rampage at a VTA rail yard.
Train 31, let's see, it's 85, someone shooting right outside the door.
8 VTA workers killed as a gunman targets workers in 2 buildings. Now stories emerge of selfless heroism as police and deputies rush in.
While the shots are still being fired, our teams with San Jose PD are entering the building.
New questions this evening about the motive of the man who targeted co-workers and torched his own home.
You're looking at me, you stare at me all the time. When I say hi, they keep looking at me. I was scared too, though. My wife scared him too.
He's unfriendly?
Unfriendly, no, not at all. He doesn't talk to anybody.
The FBI joins the investigation.
And now a community in shock.
We know he was there, and he hasn't been returning any calls, no text messages, no nothing.
And the tragedy being felt at the highest levels in Washington, D.C.
It is absolutely tragic.
And good evening to you. I'm Alan Martin.
And I'm Elizabeth Cook. Our team of reporters is getting answers tonight. We start with KPIX 5's Andrea Borba, live near the scene with the latest on the shooting investigation. Andrea?
Well, Elizabeth, the initial call out came into Santa Clara County at 6:34. The VTA yard is right behind me. We are in the government center here in Santa Clara County. The jail is right catty corner across from that. Right now, things are moving very slowly, very methodically, as investigators look for explosives inside that VTA rail yard with an assist from the FBI and the ATF. We have a soundbite now from Russell Davis with the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department.
This was during a shift change where deputies from the midnight shift and day shift were on at the same time, going through a transition into different shifts. Once we received that information, deputies and surrounding officers immediately responded to the location and addressed the threat in the situation. They did not wait. They immediately went into the scene and rendered first aid and rescued victims out of the building as fast as they can to figure out what was going on.
Now, 9 people are dead today here in San Jose. 8 of those were VTA employees. 1 was the suspect himself. We've learned turned the weapon on himself from Sheriff Laurie Smith. You'll hear from that in just a moment. There is still 1 person right now in critical condition at Valley Medical Center here in San Jose. We're told by the Red Cross that they have delivered 55 units of blood products to VMC to help treat victims of the shooting. Of course, there were other people injured, not just those who perished in this shooting. This is Sheriff Laurie Smith.
They're my true heroes. There was active shooting going on at that time. There were victims shot in 2 separate buildings, but they responded the way that they should. They took their life in their hands, and I know for sure that when the suspect knew the law enforcement was there, he took his own life.
Now, we have learned from Sheriff Smith that there was an explosive dog in that initial deployment of deputies inside the VTA building. That explosive dog keyed on something inside the building. They are now looking for multiple devices inside the VTA building. This is a process that will take hours, if not days. It is a very large facility. They want to scrape every portion of this with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that they are not putting anyone else in danger. We're talking about bringing in extra bomb dogs from alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. We are talking about bringing in bomb robots to disable whatever might be in there. And that is before they can get the coroner in there to take care of those who perished in today's shooting here at the VTA facility. In the county government center where I'm standing right now, things are relatively shut down. Only the jail is really functioning at this point. The VTA facility is shut down. The county government center is shut down. The only thing happening right now is this investigation with multiple assists from ATF and FBI. FBI is sending some people out from Quantico to make sure that they can help process the mountains and mountains of evidence much, much quicker. Elizabeth,
yeah,
Alan.
They want to make sure that that building is safe before they're able to go in and do any more processing. Andrea, I want to talk a little bit about the timing of this, because there were 2 shift changes that were happening, not only at VTA, where the night shift was about ready to go home and the day shift was coming in to start their workday, but also there was a shift change happening at the Sheriff's Department. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it impacted the response?
Well, Elizabeth, the Sheriff's Department, these guys get off the graveyard shift, and women as well, get off the graveyard shift around 6 a.m. This was 6:34 in the morning. It takes a while to de-gear. It takes a while for the morning shift to get on board, get briefed, get geared into their cars and ready to roll here out of the government center in San Jose. So you had double the amount of deputies around when this shooting happened at 6:34 in the morning. They all ran over to that VTA building that is behind me right now, that has turned into a crime scene, where you have miles of crime scene tape up right now, and investigators and bomb dogs all looking to make sure nothing else is going to happen out here.
Yeah, they're going to comb for all evidence. All right, Andrea, thank you.
All right, now let's get to KPIX 5's Kit Doe. He is live where investigators are combing through what could be a second crime scene, the suspect's home.
Yes, this is the other large crime scene here in the South Bay. A very large contingent of ATF officers, FBI officers, as well as county and city police officers. They have been here since about the 6 o'clock hour, and they will be here well into the night. We have been shooting footage all day long, and this is the best of it. These are bomb technicians entering the home here at 1178 Angmar Court. They've been here since the early morning hours. At about 1 o'clock, all of a sudden, they pushed us back, evacuating a 1-block radius. Sources tell us there are bomb-making materials inside. We have a photo of Sam Cassidy now, 57 years old. He was a current VTA employee at the time of the shooting. He lived here for several decades, upwards of 20 years. We also have surveillance video of Cassidy leaving his home at 5:30 a.m. this morning. He can be seen walking out in a uniform with reflective striping. He had a large duffel bag that he loaded into the passenger side of a white truck. Then he walked to the back of the truck and got into the rear, got onto the driver's seat and then drove off. And then an hour later, that is when this happened. The neighbor who lives across the street shot this footage with his cell phone. The house was fully engulfed in flames at about 6:40 a.m. this morning. The fire department called 2 alarms. They doused the fire, but they said that they smelled gasoline, found gas containers inside, and saw several hundred rounds of ammunition inside. We spoke with Sandra Jones, who came here to the scene to just get a sense of it all. Her friend works at VTA.
He was a selfish person and decided, well, if I'm going to go, I'm going to take a lot of people with me. That's what a lot of people, unfortunately, people are self-centered and desire to do something evil, and we're dealing with evilness in this world, and people decide that I don't care about nobody, I don't care about myself, so I'm going to take many people out as I can.
What kind of person does this?
Evil, self-centered person that really is probably needs help, never looked for help besides what he was thinking about himself. Somebody that's really has no hope. Has no hope.
As for the nature of the threat that forced the 1-block evacuation, an officer told us that it was involved with explosives. And so the FAA has shut down the airspace around here, and no one's allowed over the house now. Still an active scene out here. We'll stay out here for at least a couple more hours and bring you the latest, but for now, that's it. Alan?
Well, Kit, I know you mentioned they did push you back a ways for safety purposes, but have you been able to see them bring anything out of that house? I know earlier you talked about stuff they were taking in.
Yes, so they have surrounded the scene here with vehicles, so they've blocked our line of sight, so we can't see what they're taking in and out of there. You see this a lot in crime scenes that are run by federal agencies. They're just trying to keep everything close to the vest. They don't want to expose how anything's going, so I wish I knew the answer to that, but we're just guessing at this point.
Yeah, they're not going to tip their hand. All right, Kit, stay on it. Thanks so much.
2 victims were transported to the Santa Clara Valley Medical Center. One of them did not survive. The other is in critical condition.
As a trauma center, Santa Clara Valley Medical Center is really well equipped to respond to these tragedies. Both nurses and doctors are specially trained to respond to trauma injuries. We have staff on site, not that you have to bring somebody in on call. So we're really well suited to take care of these serious injuries.
Now, San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo was at the scene today, most of the day. He's on the VTA board. He knows workers who were in that facility.
There is severe trauma felt by so many in this organization. I know it's going to be nearly impossible for an awful lot of members of our VTA family to go back to work at that site. We're going to have a lot of work to do to help people get through this horrible trauma and to help them heal. And that's the work for us for considerable time.
While my heart breaks, I can't stop thinking about what we could all be doing differently to stop this in our community, so this doesn't become something that just happens here, but something that should never happen.
KPIX 5's Devin Feely has been at the Reunification Center all day long, where family members are desperately awaiting answers about their loved ones. Devin?
Yeah, this is the county government building. This is the Reunification Center, as you mentioned today. This is where people were told to come if they had a loved one that was working at the VTA yard or had reason to believe that they may have been over there. And if you weren't able to get in contact with them, you were told to come here. You were told to come here for information and for answers. And there was a number of families who say they came here wanting to know what had happened to their loved ones. Those answers didn't come quickly. A couple of them came outside earlier today and talked to us about the loved ones that they were still waiting to figure out what happened to them.
We know he was there, and we have been trying to contact him since the morning time, since it happened, and he hasn't been returning any calls, no text messages, no nothing. So.
And you know he was there at the place where the shooting occurred in the rail yard?
Yes, it's really difficult because I mean he has two little kids. And I mean, that's all I could think about right now, like just his kids.
Now, quite frankly, those families still don't really know. They are waiting for definitive word, as they have been waiting for several hours, as they have been waiting for much of the day. And that speaks to the complexity of this investigation, of the carnage, and of the chaos that's out there at the scene. Because until they're able to secure that area, as you mentioned, until the bomb squad presumably, is able to come in and determine that there is no longer any threat, then investigators in the medical examiner's office aren't able to go in and begin to identify the people there. So this has really just been a very anxious, heartbreaking day for those families who know that their loved ones were there at the time of the shooting, have not been able to reach them, and are still waiting for some kind of definitive word about what happened to the people that they love.
Yes, it's understandable why it's taking so long. You want to make sure you're eliminating any potential threat there, but it doesn't make it any easier for the families that are desperately waiting to hear anything from their loved ones. Devin, you mentioned earlier about a cell phone. They've been able to track down a cell phone that's not moving within the building. I believe it was the young man we just heard from, and yet they don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, just think about modern technology, right? You hear that there's been a shooting at this location where your loved one works. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to call them. They don't pick up. In many instances, you can then track the location of the phone. That family says that they know where the phone is, that it's over there in the yard. It's stationary. It's not moving. Nobody picks it up when they call it. Now, that could simply mean that somebody dropped it. But, so they know that he was there, that his phone is still there, and they're just trying to get information, and it's a waiting game.
Sure. Earlier, Devin, Jeff Rosen mentioned that he was setting up a team of people that were going to be there to assist these family members, either with some sort of counseling and also just information as to where their loved ones might be or where they can go next. Have you seen anybody arrive yet? Does it look like more personnel is going to this location?
Yeah, so kind of what happened, just very briefly. So initially they told families to come here to the county government offices. And this was, for the purposes of this day, this was the Reunification Center. Now, because this was going to be something that was not going to happen quickly, that these answers weren't going to come right away, they actually bused some people from this area to the district's victim assistance area, another building a little distance away from here, because I think they realized that this was not going to be something for which there was going to be quick, easy answers or resolution. So earlier today, a couple hours ago, they bused some people away from this location to a place where they're going to be waiting for a little bit longer until they get the information they're seeking.
It is agonizing. The DA did mention that he hoped to have all the information to the victims' families by the end of the day, but I know they want to make sure that building is safe as well. All right, Devin, thank you.
Another aspect for the victims is the Red Cross providing some help and resources to the families impacted by the tragedy. KPIX 5's Maria Medina joins our team coverage with that part of the story for us. Maria?
And Alan, District Attorney Jeff Rosen held a press conference here just a couple hours ago, vowing to find out if anything could have been done to prevent what happened this morning. So where I'm standing is the Family Assistance Center. It has been set up again here at the Red Cross for the victims, employees, their families, any witnesses as well. It is the same center that opened up for victims of the Gilroy Garlic Festival shooting 2 years ago. So sadly, this county is all too familiar with helping victims after a tragedy like this. Again, the district attorney spoke not too long ago here, and here's some of what he had to say.
This morning, all of us woke up to a new nightmare. This one, 2 blocks away from my office. Honestly, I pray that this is the last time we have to open such a center in our county. We are going to do everything we can today and in the weeks and months ahead to support all of the victims and their families.
And this parking lot is full, not just with the media, but we've seen a lot of people in the parking lot, families of the VTA employees, possibly those still missing as their relatives look for answers. The district attorney said during that news conference that they are still trying to notify some of the family members. So that's probably why we're seeing somewhat of a delay. But again, you know, the mood out here is very somber, very heavy hearts. One woman actually asked the district attorney during that news conference, where can we find answers? When can we find answers? I've called every single hospital in the area and I have come up empty. So those are the stories that we're hearing out here. And my photographer had just shown you a shot of some of the family members here continuing to wait for answers. We've been here for a couple hours and so have they. So just to set up, you know, the picture of what we're seeing out here.
Sure.
That's what we're seeing, and very heartbreaking,
so,
tragic.
Maria, it is so heartbreaking, the whole thing is, and the Red Cross Center, they're operating as the facility, but I'm under the impression that it's not the Red Cross, it's not their responsibility to give the answers the families need. It's the county. Have you seen anyone from the county being able to step in and help, bring them in and help them?
Yeah, and that's why the district attorney was here. So where Devin was, I believe, was the first stage of that reunification center. And now the families are being told to wait here. This is also where they can get counseling if they want. We have seen county employees in and out of this building, as well as the Red Cross, of course. The district attorney told us that this center will remain open until 7 tonight, and then it'll open up again at 11 a.m. tomorrow. But again, you know, the center opens up every time there is a tragedy like this for the families and the victims and any witnesses who want some help and get some answers as well. Alan?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've needed it way, way too often. Maria, thanks so much.
President Biden has ordered flags to be flown at half-staff in honor of the victims. The flag on top of the White House was lowered this afternoon and will stay that way until sunset on Sunday.
The shooting in San Jose the facts are still revealing themselves, but it is absolutely tragic. It's absolutely tragic. I have family that live in San Jose. I've worked for many, many years with the mayor of San Jose and that police department. And my prayers and my thoughts are with all of those families that have been affected.
And this statement from President Biden, quote, there are at least 8 families who will never be whole again. There are children, parents, and spouses who are waiting to hear whether someone they love is ever going to come home. There are union brothers and sisters, good, honest, hardworking people who are mourning their own. Every life that is taken by a bullet pierces the soul of our nation. We can and we must do better.
Some of the employees at VTA, they're represented by the Amalgamated Transit Workers Union Local 265.
Those that lost their lives today are being remembered as essential workers.
Today is about supporting victims. It's about sending love and support to everyone who came to work this morning intending on serving the public and ended up not going home. It's unacceptable, and what we're asking for right now is for there to be respect and love that's dedicated and shown to all of these workers. They need money, they need support, and we need to make sure that their families are also being respected in terms of giving them their space to mourn.
Senator Dianne Feinstein released a statement saying, quote, "Once again, we're dealing with the tragic aftermath of another mass shooting, this time at a San Jose rail yard where an employee killed at least 8 people. My heart goes out to those victims and their families whose lives were shattered today."
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi issued this statement saying in part, quote, "All Americans join the San Jose community in sadness and shock over today's horrific mass shooting. As a Californian, I am personally devastated. Today and in the days to come, the nation stands with the San Jose community."
San Jose Congressman Ro Khanna released a statement saying, quote, "While much still remains to be confirmed at this time, one thing is abundantly clear. The gun violence epidemic will continue to rage unless we take concrete action to protect our country. It was our community today, but it will be someone else's tomorrow. My heart is shattered thinking of the lives lost as well as the families and communities upended by this senseless tragedy. These were some of our frontline heroes who kept the South Bay moving through the worst of the pandemic." Over 80% of Americans want common sense gun control measures. Background checks, red flag laws, and longer waiting periods are all within reach. When I head back to Washington, I will continue to push for this urgently needed legislation.
And we are learning some more about the suspect seen here in this surveillance video. This is from his neighbor's home, leaving his house before the shooting. Within the past hour, we have heard from the suspect's ex-wife. She revealed to Associated Press that he had a bad temper and would tell her he wanted to kill people at work. But she says she never believed him until now, nearly 12 hours after the shooting. But still no word on any kind of a motive. All right, let's turn to the outside. The weather. Paul Hagan is joining us, and I see a little smoke there behind you.
Yeah, no easy transition away from obviously the big story of the day, but let's talk about the wildfire that developed just on the west side of Sonoma. This is earlier this afternoon. This is the view from Sleepy Mountain, one of the PG&E cameras looking towards that fire, and you can see quite a bit of smoke billowing up. But this is what it looks like right now, a much better perspective looking towards the west side of Sonoma, and you really can't see any smoke at all. So the fire crews did a great job of getting a handle on that. Unfortunately, we're going to be looking at an elevated fire threat as we get closer to Memorial Day, specifically on Memorial Day, and then continuing into the first days of June. Looking outside right now, well, there's plenty of fog as we look to the west towards Sutro Tower from on top of Salesforce Tower, and that fog is going to spread back out across the bay and into the inland valleys as we head through this evening, tonight, and into early tomorrow morning. Fortunately, the fog took a little bit of a break for much of the Bay Area for people to get up very early this morning and see that lunar eclipse. If you have any pictures to share, you can just tag us, hashtag KPIX on social media. Here are those current temperatures: 55 degrees downtown. It's only 61 degrees in Oakland. Otherwise, temperatures are in the 70s, even 80s. 70 degrees exactly in San Jose, 78 in Santa Rosa and Livermore, and 83 degrees right now in Concord. A bit of a warm-up compared to yesterday because we didn't have as much of that fog. So the sun's energy went into warming up the atmosphere instead of dissipating the fog. But the fog's going to be a bit thicker, so temperatures will take a step back tomorrow. Waking up to very similar temperatures to what we've had the past several mornings. In the 40s to around 50 degrees, just slightly below average for this time of year. High temperatures tomorrow are going to be right around what's normal for late May, and that's going to be the case Friday and Saturday before that warm-up starts to kick in as we head deeper into the Memorial Day weekend. Temperatures in the 60s around the Bay, low 60s for San Francisco, mid to upper 60s for the East Bay, 70s in the Santa Clara Valley, and then right around 80 degrees for Concord. Let's zoom in for a closer look. Temperatures only reach the 50s along the coast, no change there. Around 70 degrees down the peninsula and around the south end of the bay, with temperatures into the Santa Clara Valley reaching into the low to mid 70s. Temperatures also reaching the low to mid 70s for most of the Tri-Valley. The warmer spots, again, the usual locations. Farther east, inland in the East Bay, temperatures reaching the low to mid 80s around Brentwood, Antioch, and in Fairfield. Around the bay, temperatures will be in the 60s for the most part. A couple spots are going to struggle to reach 60 degrees, and then well into the 70s, if not into the low 80s for the North Bay. And the warmer we get, again, the higher the fire danger is going to be. It's going to be a noticeably breezy afternoon tomorrow, but it's going to be an onshore wind that it does contain some moisture, so that helps us out a little bit. We're more concerned about early next week and the scenario that's going to shape up with hotter temperatures shaping up further inland. Temperatures farther north, farther into the 80s for northern Sonoma and Napa counties. Parts of Lake County might stay in the 70s. Let's check out Memorial Day weekend day by day. Inland on Saturday, temperatures just above 80 degrees. Into the upper half of the 80s, though, on Sunday, and then temperatures on Memorial Day well into the 90s. We're not likely to set any new record high temperatures. It's the last day of May, and a lot of record high temperatures inland are in triple-digit territory, so we're not looking quite that hot. It's going to be a warm up around the bay, but everything depends on how strong the offshore winds are going to be, how much of that warmer air gets transported towards the coast. Looks like temperatures are going to warm up through the 60s and into the 70s around the bay, through the 50s and into the 60s along the coast. We'll keep you updated. Memorial Day is still 5 days away. There's plenty of time for things to change in the long-range forecast. It does look like we are going to see the temperatures backing off slightly by Tuesday and Wednesday. I think Memorial Day will be the peak of this little heat wave, but it's still going to be awfully hot inland on Tuesday, and temperatures on Wednesday are still going to be well above normal, even if we do manage to stay out of the 90s on a widespread basis. But anytime temperatures are in the 90s this early in the season and we throw in those dry offshore winds, it means the fire danger is going to be significantly elevated, something we're going to have to watch very carefully as Memorial Day gets a little bit closer. The unofficial beginning of summer is definitely going to feel like summer. I'll have another update, including a closer look at what we expect over the next several days coming up at 5:30.
Okay, Paul, we will see you then. Now, just taking a look at some of our Chopper 5 video from earlier and recapping the story today. At 6:34 this morning at the light rail yard, the VTA facility on West Younger, there was a shooting at 6:34. 8 people were shot and killed. Another person is in critical condition. The suspected shooter apparently died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And we are told that the police, the ATF, the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, they are all searching the VTA facility for any possible explosive devices. They said that a bomb-sniffing dog got a, quote, hit on something there. There was also a fire that took place at the suspect's home on Angmar Court about the same time that the shooting took place, and also reports of possible bomb-making devices or ingredients there at the home. There's the smoke coming from the fire from the suspect's home. That's a picture of the shooter, the shooting suspect there on the right. But so far, Kit Doe on the scene where the home is cannot tell that they've actually made it safe to go in that home to search it. There's multiple rounds of ammunition, hundreds of rounds. Gasoline is in there. And as far as we know, they have not done an extensive search of the VTA light rail facility.
That's right. Families are being diverted to the reunification center there on First Street, where they are awaiting more information. Now, this is going to take a long time because, as Alan mentioned, the ATF FBI bomb squad going through both the light rail facility, the VTA light rail facility where the shooting occurred, and also the suspect's home, investigating at both locations any kind of evidence as to what led up to the shooting, but also potential bomb-making materials, explosive devices that potentially could be at either of these facilities. Jeff Harp, our security analyst, is standing by. Jeff, can you, looking at all of the facts that we know right now, we don't know much, but looking at how they are going through both of these locations inch by inch, can you tell us a little bit about the investigation right now?
Yeah, well, first of all, they're making sure that the neighborhood's safe, that the building where he worked is safe, and that's why they've cordoned off this area. They want to make sure if the bomb dog got a hit on something, then obviously they have some concern about an IED, some kind of improvised explosive device, or something else. I mean, he obviously had ammunition at home, so canines will hit on gunpowder, but gunpowder can also be used to make explosive devices. They're going to make sure that everything around that area is safe, and that's their main concern right now. We know that the shooter is deceased, and so as far as the immediate emergency goes, That sort of has been put to the side, but now they need to focus on the crime scene, making a determination if it's safe for the first responders who are there to go dig into other evidence that may be at the house or what they might find at the VTA station.
I know it's very early in this investigation. It happened at 6:30 this morning. It hasn't even been 12 hours. It's been 11 hours. But Jeff, when we look at this, when we look back at San Bernardino, at Gilroy, is there any type of a common denominator that you see in many of these mass shootings?
Well, and I think we got to be real careful about how we try to associate each shooting with the other. If it's possible that, obviously I don't believe there's any links, but I think the most common thing that we're finding with most of these shootings is a mental health issue. And so you try to look back, and many times when I talk about workplace violence and how do you detect workplace violence, what do you see? The thing that we have to remember is there probably were some warning signs of some type, some anger management issues, possibly things that he said to others. And I think a lot of times people tend to try to not take things out of context. And I always advise people to err on the side of caution, because you don't know what that person's really thinking. And it's always better to try to offer help, to try to dissect that whole piece of information. But I think what it will boil down to is, possible mental health issues. And certainly they will go back and look at all of his employment records to see if there was something in his employment profile that would have led us to maybe prevent this thing from happening.
Okay, but these gun violence restraining laws, the red flag laws, they're in place. Why do you think, why aren't they being used? Does that go to people are too afraid to take that step?
Well, I mean, so you got to think about how these things work. So if a person is declared mentally incompetent, and let's just say, for example, the person's declared mentally incompetent and they were in the military, and that person gets out of the military, and then the military records aren't shared with local authorities, and they move from state to state to state, these records are not that simple to follow. And you can buy a firearm in a pretty short order in certain states. And that means that your mental health issue may have not carried with you from those previous states.
Right. It's a difficult process.
It's so complicated.
Yeah. Wow.
Jeff, we learned that agents from Quantico, Virginia, are being sent in to assist in this investigation. Can you talk a little bit about the advantages that they would bring to this investigation? Obviously, local authorities are taking the lead on this as well.
Right. Well, the behavior analysis unit, I mean, this is the sort of thing they look at day in and day out. They are professionals that are hired specifically to do that sort of work, to look at what could we have done to prevent this. What were the warning signs? Because we've seen it happen in other instances in San Bernardino. We saw it happen here at YouTube. We saw it happen at various other locations. So the warning signs are the things that we need to try to figure out why we didn't see this, and how seriously do we take it when somebody says, oh, I want to kill that person. And I think people are sometimes afraid to go to someone and say, hey, my neighbor said, they were angry and they said they want to kill this person. And, they kind of they feel like they're taking it out of context. But you've got to take all these things seriously, because what it boils down to is you don't know what's going on in a person's personal life that may have caused them to reach that tipping point.
And bottom line is we may never know why. Gilroy, we don't have a motive. We don't know why.
No, unfortunately, we don't.
Yeah. All right. Jeff Harp, thank you so much for the insight.
Thanks, Alan.
Okay.
Right now on KPIX 5 and streaming on CBSN Bay Area, more local news at 5:30. A shooter opened fire this morning at a VTA facility in San Jose, killing 8 people. He's been identified as Sam Cassidy. This is surveillance video showing the VTA shooting suspect leaving his home this morning and driving off to work, where police say he opened fire on his co-workers. Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Cook.
And I'm Alan Martin. Let's get right to KPIX 5's Andrea Borba. She is live at the scene with the very latest on this ongoing lengthy investigation. Andrea?
Well, Elizabeth and Alan, things moved very quickly this morning once shots began being fired inside the VTA rail yard here in the County Government Center in San Jose. We are now in the portion of the day and the next several days where things are going to move very slowly and methodically as investigators inside are trying to clear what they believe are multiple bomb-like devices inside the building that a bomb-sniffing dog picked up early this morning when the initial push of sheriff's deputies went inside that building while shots were still being fired. Now, on top of this, the VTA family has now lost 9 members of their family. 8 of those were killed by Sam Cassidy, and then Sam Cassidy killed himself when sheriff's deputies entered that building. We have heard several times today from a very tearful president of the VTA, Glenn Hendricks, talking about what has happened to this VTA family over the past few hours.
We're asking that our customers be patient with us as we work through this event and try and recover our service. And I also want to thank all the law enforcement that's been involved in their quick reaction and the way they've been dealing with everyone who is involved by this. And once again, I want to say how terribly sorry I am and want to thank everybody in the VTA family who's been so affected.
Now, VTA right now is shut down light rail service. They put in bus bridges in places where that light rail facility is. But at the moment, they are securing 4 facilities, 3 bus yards and VTA headquarters. Out of an abundance of caution, the security teams began to sweep all VTA facilities with bomb-sniffing dogs, those dogs that we talked about earlier from the ATF. As of 5 o'clock, those dogs are still working inside those facilities out of an abundance of caution. It is unknown at this point when exactly light rail service might resume here in Santa Clara County because we have multiple agencies on scene and they all want to make sure that this area is clear and safe, that there aren't any explosive devices anywhere else. Among those providing assistance is the FBI out of Quantico. They are flying in a team of agents right now to help assist in this investigation. Here is FBI Special Agent in charge of the San Francisco office, Craig Fair.
We are providing assistance in the form of evidence response and recovery. We are flying national assets from Quantico, Virginia. We will be providing ballistics, technical forensic equipment and analysis. We will be bringing teams in from other divisions throughout the FBI to assist in the analysis of the crime scene.
Santa Clara County is in charge of this investigation, but is getting a heavy lift from ATF as well as the FBI, providing some of their ballistics experts, their explosive experts, as well as the crime lab to process the mountains and mountains of evidence that will come out of this scene eventually. At the moment, they are still sweeping this very large facility behind me on West Heading and Younger in San Jose. Meanwhile, 8 people have died, 9 when you count the shooter. There is 1 person still in critical condition at Valley Medical Center here in San Jose, and countless others were injured during this shooting. The Red Cross has provided 55 units of blood products to VMC to make sure that those people can survive those injuries. Elizabeth, Allen.
Andrea, you mentioned these other the additional VTA facilities being shut down. As you say, they're just being very cautious, no specific threats. But I'm under the impression the VTA, from what they said today, they're still going to step up. Those drivers are still going to show up. They're going to provide service, right?
They are going to provide bus bridge service. So the routes that were covered by their light rail lines will now be covered by buses. They're going to be checking all of those light rail cars, all of the rail lines themselves to make sure there are no booby traps, perhaps any explosive devices anywhere. They want to make sure that the public is safe. When you start talking about bombs, you have to immediately think large and how bad could it be before you can clear a scene and make sure that everything is okay. And that's exactly what all of these agencies are doing today. And that's why this investigation is going to move so slowly for the next few days. They are working out of an abundance of caution, Alan.
Well, and it's a testament to the driver's dedication to providing that service for the community. Andrea, thanks so much.
KPIX 5's Kit Doe is live at a second scene where investigators are digging through the suspect's home right now. Kit?
Yeah, it has been a very active scene all throughout the day. They've been here since the 6 o'clock hour. A large contingent of ATF officers FBI agents as well as local law enforcement from the sheriff and San Jose police. The bomb squad is here to assist. They've been here all day long. In fact, we've got some footage of them entering the home at 1178 Angmar Court. They are wearing all their protective gear with them. They have pushed us back in the 1 o'clock hour, and they started evacuating a 1-block radius around the neighborhood. Sources tell us here at the scene that they are looking for bomb-making materials, and they have in fact found bomb-making materials inside that home. And we also have a photo of Sam Cassidy. Here he is, 57 years old. He was a current VTA employee. Neighbors tell us he was kind of a loner, not married, no kids. No family ever came to visit him at his home that he had lived for a long time, several years. We also have surveillance video of Cassidy leaving his home at 5:39 a.m. We see him walking out in a uniform. The dark-colored uniform had reflective striping on the front and the back. He loaded a dark duffel bag into the passenger side and then got into the driver's seat and then drove off. And here is cell phone footage taken an hour later. This is by neighbor Doug Sue, lives directly across the street. By the way, that surveillance video also belonged to him. This footage was shot here at 6:40 a.m. Quickly went to 2 alarms. You can see the house was fully engulfed, and investigators say when they got on scene, they could smell gas. They found gas cans, and they found several hundred rounds of ammunition inside. Neighbor Doug Sue said Cassidy was very unfriendly to the point that it made him fearful, did not want to be around him. Doug described one encounter they had in the past. You would back your vehicle into his driveway to use it to maneuver to get out, right? And he yelled at you.
He's yelling at you, get out, don't even come through my house. He's kind of mean. So after that, I never talked to him.
And so we are hearing now that the scene will collapse around the 8:30 p.m. time frame. It'll allow neighbors to get back in and access their home. But for now, the scene remains active. That's the latest here. We'll send it back to you.
Yeah, Kate, you mentioned that there's a 1-block radius that's been evacuated right now. A lot of folks not able to get back into their homes. There's also a no-fly zone over the home right now. Bless you. I know you've been out there for a very, very long time. Can you give me a sense of how the neighbors are feeling? I mean, they must feel so sad for what happened not too far from their homes, but also terrified that this individual was living so close to them and the danger that they potentially put them in and their families.
It's a range of emotions, terrified, you mentioned that, but also one of anger that all of these things were inside his home, that he apparently structured this fire, did it so in a way where it would smolder for some time, and then it would burn uncontrolled to the point to where it could have jumped to the next house. Those rounds could have gone off. Somebody could have gotten hurt. We're talking about a tragedy that was that could have been much, much worse out here. And so people are angry, they're resentful, they're asking why. One woman even told us, good riddance.
All right, enough said. All right, Kit, thank you.
Authorities say the 2 victims were taken to the Santa Clara Valley Medical Center. We're told one of those victims sadly did not survive. The other is in critical condition.
As a trauma center, Santa Clara Valley Medical Center is really well equipped to respond to these tragedies. Both nurses and doctors are specially trained to respond to trauma injuries. We have staff on site, not that you have to bring somebody in on call. So we're really well suited to take care of these serious injuries.
Now, some of the employees at VTA, they are represented by a union, the Amalgamated Transit Workers Union Local 265.
Those that lost their lives today are being remembered as essential workers.
Today is about supporting victims. It's about sending love and support to everyone who came to work this morning intending on serving the public and ended up not going home. It's unacceptable, and what we're asking for right now is for there to be respect and love that's dedicated and shown to all of these workers. They need money, they need support, and we need to make sure that their families are also being respected in terms of giving them their space to mourn.
Some of those workers did not go home. The families are waiting. KPIX5's Devin Feely live at the Reunification Center, not far from where the shooting happened. You've talked to a couple families who are indeed just waiting.
Yeah, this is where families were instructed to come if they had a loved one that was over at the VTA yard, and if they couldn't get in contact with them, this was where they were supposed to come. I want to just tell you two brief stories from things that I witnessed here firsthand over the course of this very, just kind of sorrowful day. So the families entered this building, and they came here with the hopes of getting some kind of information. What happened to my loved ones? I can't get in contact with them. Earlier this morning, we heard just kind of a cry, a wail, someone that just sounded completely inconsolable. It sounded like a woman's voice. It really just was kind of a gut punch. It just sounded heartbreaking. It was the sound of grief and loss and just raw emotion that was coming from inside of this building, presumably from someone who got some not so good news here. Now that is one set of experiences here. There was a number of people that also came here under those very same circumstances. They had someone that should have been over at that VTA yard, and they couldn't reach them, and they wanted some answers. And for a lot of those families, it has been a very long day of waiting without definitive word about what happened to their loved ones. They just don't know for sure. We did talk to one of those families a short time ago, and this is what they had to say.
And just how other people, they don't really understand, especially like, I don't really know what to say right now. It's really hard for us to even like comprehend what we're feeling. And like, I never thought anything like this would even happen to any of my family members. Like, I see it over the news all the time, and all of a sudden it's becoming reality. It's crazy.
Yeah, these families have been waiting for really the balance of the day to get definitive word on what's happened to their loved ones. They are holding on as tight as they possibly can to the hope that this story might still have a happy ending for their families. As you heard there, they desperately want to be reunited with them safe and sound, but they also know that the longer that they wait, the longer that they're unable to get in contact with their loved ones and are not able to find them at a local hospital, they know that it becomes increasingly unlikely that there is going to be good news waiting for them after a long, long, sorrowful day of waiting and of anxiety and uncertainty. And the district attorney and law enforcement are trying to do everything that they can for these families. They brought in support and food, and they're trying to sort of blanket them with support as they wait. But because this investigation is in a phase now where it's just going to proceed somewhat slowly and methodically, there may be hours more yet of waiting for some of these families. Back to you.
And Devin, that story you were telling us throughout the day of the family, they knew where their loved one's cell phone was. They used the Find Me app, and they could tell where it was, the location. Is any update on that? Any information new?
They're still waiting. But just imagine, just how heartsick you'd have to be as a family, right? You hear that there's a shooting, you know that your loved one should be there, you call them, you can't reach them, then you do the next best thing, which is try to locate their phone. You see where it is, you see that it's over there at the shooting scene, but nobody's picking it up and you can't get any more answers. I mean, could you imagine a scenario that's any sadder or more heartbreaking than that for a family?
I know it happened a lot in the Las Vegas shooting, and it was just as heartbreaking and tragic then as it is now. Well, keep us updated. Devin, great job. Thank you.
President Biden has ordered flags to be flown at half-staff in honor of the victims. The flag on top of the White House was lowered this afternoon and will stay that way until sunset on Sunday.
The shooting in San Jose the facts are still revealing themselves, but it is absolutely tragic. It's absolutely tragic. I have family that live in San Jose. I've worked for many, many years with the mayor of San Jose and that police department. And my prayers and my thoughts are with all of those families that have been affected.
And this statement from President Biden, quote, there are at least 8 families who will never be whole again. There are children, parents, and spouses who are waiting to hear whether someone they love is ever going to come home. There are union brothers and sisters, good, honest, hardworking people who are mourning their own. Every life that is taken by a bullet pierces the soul of our nation. We can and we must do more. Senator Dianne Feinstein released a statement saying, quote, once again, we're dealing with the tragic aftermath of another mass shooting, this time at a San Jose rail yard where an employee killed at least 8 people. My heart goes out to those victims and their families whose lives were shattered today.
And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi issuing a statement today also saying in part, quote, all Americans join the San Jose community in sadness and shock over today's horrific mass shooting. As a Californian, I am personally devastated. Today and in the days to come, the nation stands with the San Jose community.
And San Jose Congressman Ro Khanna released a statement saying, quote, while much still remains to be confirmed at this time, one thing is abundantly clear. The gun violence epidemic will continue to rage unless we take concrete action to protect our country. It was our community today, but it will be someone else's tomorrow. My heart is shattered thinking of the lives lost, as well as the families and communities upended by this senseless tragedy. These were some of our frontline heroes who kept the South Bay moving through the worst of the pandemic. Over 80% of Americans want common sense gun control measures, background checks, red flag laws, and longer waiting periods are all within reach. When I head back to Washington, I will continue to push for this urgently needed legislation. KPIX 5's Len Ramirez, who has been on scene since this morning. Len, share some of your observations on the story, which has changed dramatically in the past 11 hours.
Well, it really has changed dramatically. A lot of twists and turns to this story. It came on as an active shooter very early this morning, and as I was driving into the scene, I noticed the fire from the smoke of the house where the shooter lived. And so you had these dual scenes. You wonder if there is some sort of connection or just some sort of weird coincidence. Well, now we know that there was a connection between those two events. When I arrived here on scene, I noticed that the posture of the law enforcement people who were already here was very different than an active shooter scene would be. They did not have guns drawn, for instance, things like that. And so that kind of told me that this was a potential recovery scene as opposed to defensive active shooter scene that was going on. Information from sources started coming in about multiple deaths. And as the day wore on, of course, we got confirmation that 8 people lost their lives here, in addition to the shooter taking his own life. And so you heard from law enforcement officials as well as city officials talking about the sadness that they feel. Some of the people, the VTA director and Mayor Sam Liccardo, getting choked up as they were talking to the media about this event. And as the time is worn on, I'm starting to get to that point as well, because you're hearing statements coming from President Biden and Vice President Harris talking about San Jose in these terms. And it's so far something that San Jose has been able to escape until today, this list of mass shooting cities that keeps growing. Las Vegas, Columbine, Parkland, here in Santa Clara County and Gilroy. And now, unfortunately, we have to add San Jose to that list. And it's a very sad acknowledgement that that list exists, for one, and that now we are a part of that. And so people around the country, in fact, around the world, now know San Jose for this event, in spite of all the good things that are going on in San Jose on a daily basis here. So it is very deeply saddening that this happened here in this city. Of course, nothing can approach the sadness that is being felt tonight by all of the folks who are connected, loved ones of the victims in this case. So just a very tragic day here in San Jose.
Len, you've had such an incredible career of covering the Bay Area, and unfortunately you've covered stories like this before. Was there anything different about this particular day or this particular incident that struck you, or was it that it's similar emotions that you felt before covering these events?
Well, these types of events, it's a little different. I'm a lifelong San Jose resident, and so as soon as I heard about this, I jumped into gear and came down here. But as a professional, you kind of put things off to the side, your emotions, because you're covering the story, perhaps one of the most important stories in San Jose's history now. And so you're pushing ahead and you're trying to get the best information out to the viewers and to the folks around the world that are tuning in. Some of my comments coming from around the globe today on Twitter about this shooting in San Jose, California. So, there are two kind of, emotions that you feel. There's the professional reporter part of you, and then there's the human being, San Jose resident part of you that is, saddened as you continue to work through this.
All right, Len. Well, thank you. Governor Newsom canceled a trip to Los Angeles to visit with families of the victims.
He expressed frustration with having to, once again, comfort grieving families after yet another mass shooting.
Expression of condolences, all the right emotions and perhaps the right words, but it begs the damn question, what the hell's going on in the United States of America? What the hell's wrong with us? And when are we going to come to grips with this? When are we going to put down our arms, literally and figuratively, our politics, stale rhetoric, finger pointing, all the hand-wringing consternation that produces nothing except more fury and frustration, more scenes like this repeated over and over and over again.
And tragically, we're following some breaking news of a freeway shooting in Contra Costa County. Police say a woman was shot in the leg on a connector from southbound 680 to westbound 24 in Lafayette. This took place about 3:30 this afternoon. The victim says she was shot by a man in the passenger seat of a Chrysler 300. She is expected to be okay, but we'll keep an eye on it. Bring you details just as soon as we get them.
Before we leave you here at 5 o'clock, we do want to give you an update on the forecast. Here's Paul Hagan. Paul?
Yeah, we're heading closer to the holiday weekend, heading closer to an early season heat wave, which is going to elevate the fire threat. So let's get into the details of what's going to happen. In the short term, just minor changes day to day as we head through the rest of this week. And even to start the 3-day weekend on Saturday, the one minor change we are going to see, I think, slightly cooler inland temperatures tomorrow and then nearly steady high temperatures for Friday and Saturday. I think the coolest day, we'll put that in quotes, for inland portions of the Bay Area is going to be on Saturday. And then we're going to be seeing that heat wave taking over. See when we get the camera adjusted just a little bit. Let's check out what's happening right now with a view towards the west and that fog hanging out along the coast. Temperatures topped out in the upper 80s for Concord and Fairfield. San Jose made it up into the mid 70s. Oakland and San Francisco made it into the 60s, which is pretty close to average for this time of year. Current temperatures are in the 60s still in San Francisco and in Oakland at the airports. Downtown San Francisco has dropped down into the 50s. Farther inland, just 60s for San Jose and Petaluma, both at 66 degrees, but then temperatures warm up the farther inland you go. Still 83 in Concord and 85 degrees in Fairfield. Visibility as we head through tonight is going to drop off. You saw that fog hanging out along the coast. It's going to spread across the bay and into the inland valleys, except the North Bay. I think you're going to stay clear once again tonight. That was the case last night, so you had good visibility for that lunar eclipse. I'll show some pictures of that coming up at 6 o'clock. Once the sun comes up, the fog should back up pretty quickly. Right along the coast is where it's going to be confined by mid to late morning, which leaves us with plenty of sunshine and those warmer temperatures inland. Tonight, we drop down to the upper 40s to around 50 degrees. Very similar to the temperatures that we've had overnight all week. High temperatures tomorrow, the usual range that we see, about a 30-degree difference from the coast to the warmest spots inland. 50s along the coast, 60s around the bay, low 60s for the city, mid to upper 60s for the East Bay, with 70s and 80s mixed together farther inland. 74 degrees in San Jose and Livermore, up to 80 degrees in Concord, several degrees cooler than today, up to 86 degrees in Fairfield for the warm location on the map. But the really warm weather is down the line. Early next week, starting Sunday, but especially settling in by Monday and Tuesday, the first real heat dome of the season is going to be taking over, not just for the Bay Area, but for most of the West Coast. High pressure means sinking air in the atmosphere overhead. There's just literally more atmosphere piled up on top of us at that point, pushes the air down. As the air gets compressed, it heats up. And so temperatures inland are going to be into the 90s, but I don't think we're going to be setting many records. Here are the forecast high temperatures for Monday, for Memorial Day, compared to the record high temperatures. And around the bay, highs are going to reach into the 70s, upper 80s for the Santa Clara Valley, but that's 10 degrees short of record territory. even farther inland, temperatures into the mid to upper 90s will mostly fall short of even being close to records. The one place where we might come close, Santa Rosa, high temperature of 96 would at least be within shouting distance of the record of 99 degrees. The heat continues on Tuesday, even if it does back off slightly, and the long-range data is still conflicted about that. The peak of the heat might actually occur on Tuesday. Right now, I bet it's going to be on Memorial Day, and it's still going to be plenty warm on Wednesday, although an onshore breeze is going to cool off spots around the bay and along the coast by the middle of next week. Again, we'll have that look at some eclipse pictures and put a little positive news into your life coming up at 6 o'clock during the weathercast.
Paul, thank you. Let's get back out to Chopper 5 over the scene of a mass shooting. This is in San Jose. This was the scene of a mass shooting that started about 6:34 this morning. That's when the first calls came in about an active shooter at this VTA light rail facility. Right now, we know that 8 people are dead, not including the suspect, who we're told committed suicide, he shot himself. We're told one person is in critical condition at Valley Medical Center. This is just one scene that we're looking at. Investigators are also at the scene of the suspect's home, combing through with the ATF, bomb squad, FBI, looking for any evidence of potential explosives. And right now, it's still a very active crime scene, and there's still very much a threat of danger there, which is why it's taking a while for investigators to alert family members of their loved ones who may have died in this tragic shooting. Meanwhile, the family members of several VTA employees who they haven't heard from are desperately waiting for answers. KPIX 5's Maria Medina is live in San Jose at the Red Cross there. Maria?
And Liz, I'm going to give you an idea of the scene that we've been watching for the last couple of hours. Just a very heartbreaking scene as these family members desperately search for answers. Like you said, this is a group of family members that have been here for the last few hours, family members of VTA employees. We also saw San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo talking to family members. He left just a few minutes ago. But again, these are family members of VTA employees, likely those still missing, waiting for answers. One woman even asked the district attorney, who held a press conference a couple hours ago, when she would be able to find out about her missing relative. She said she had called all the hospitals in the area and had come up empty. She asked that question during the DA's news conference, and here's some of what he said before she asked that question.
I know that for many of the families, and some of whom I've talked to, when they said goodbye to their spouse this morning, their husband, they didn't mean goodbye forever. They meant goodbye until dinner time. And I'm just so sorry.
And again, this is the heartbreaking scene that we have been watching for the last couple of hours, family members searching for answers. Just to give you some context, we're standing at the Red Cross. It's been turned into the Family Assistance Center. It's been set up for victims, employees, families, witnesses as well. It's the same center that opened for the victims of the Gilroy Garlic Festival shooting 2 years ago. So sadly, this county, Santa Clara County, is all too familiar with these types of tragedies. For now, we're live in San Jose. Maria Medina, KPIX 5.